Welcome to the Work in Process podcast. Thank you so much for joining me again today on this episode of the podcast. So, this is something new for me. I'm actually trying to experiment with this. So, let me just put this disclaimer out there. The truth is this: when I'm creating an episode for the podcast, I'm actually very intentional about what I'm doing. So, I do a lot of scripting, trying to arrange my words, arrange my points so that people can understand what I'm saying, number one, and so that I can record it as fast as possible without having to think too much about what to say and how to say it so my communication can be effective. So I'm trying to do more spontaneous recording, and this happens to be one of the first ones I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to actually be doing a lot of this. So as I'm getting a thought or an idea about something, I just pick up my recording gears and then I get into recording, and then people can pick from whatever I'm saying. They can pick the wisdom that is there or the value that is there because this is what I'm practicing. And then I'm like, okay, let me just share it with people, let people see what I'm doing, and then if they understand it and they want to practice it and try it also, then they can. So that is how this episode is going to be like. I don't know, but I think other episodes too might be like that throughout the end of the year. I'm also planning to do a lot of interview episodes and everything. But as it is now, I just want to do something very spontaneous. An idea just came to me right now. And I'm like, let me share about it with my listeners on the Work in Process podcast. So I was about to make a tweet on Twitter, make a post on Twitter. I think they call it a tweet. Yeah, a tweet on Twitter. And I said, okay, before I make this tweet, let me talk about it. So when I was building the habit or trying to develop the culture of reading, I discovered that if I read a book completely, if I read a book to the end from front to back, whatever they call it, from cover to cover, once I do that, I used to try as much as possible to remember everything I've read from that book because I'm always like, I can't waste my time. I must remember something from this book. So I discovered that after the first, second, and third book, I was actually not remembering anything I've read. This was, let me say, 2020. Yes, very early 2020 when I decided to become more serious with reading. Not like I've not been reading before, but not that serious. I was just probably reading a book in 2 months or something like that. Just reading because they asked us to read. So I was not intentional about developing the culture. So what actually happened is that so I became serious 2020, and then just thinking about reading, I was like, I can't waste my time. I have to remember what I've read. So when I finish a book, I'll try to remember what I've read. I'll try to remember some points, probably some nuggets, so that at least when people ask me, am I reading? I'll be able to say, yes, I'm reading. This is what I read from this book. So I was not doing it because I want to learn. I was not doing it because I want to develop. I was not doing it because I want to grow. I was just reading because I need to read. It makes me look wise and appear sensible to people when they see me carrying a book up and down. And I understand that that's a very wrong idea, but that's a very good place to start. I'm talking to someone that's listening to me right now. That's a very good place to start. So after my first book, second book, third book, I discovered that I was not even remembering anything I've read at all. In fact, it was so bad to the point that I was actually forgetting the name of the author of the books I was reading. So if I read a book today, or yeah, if I finish reading a book today, by the time I'm almost done with the second book, I'll have forgotten completely what I read in the first book. And the circle was going like that. And I discovered that it was not productive for me after like 3, 4 months, something thereabout. I said, this thing is not making any sense because they told me to read. I'm actually supposed to read and get something from it in return immediately. So I placed a call to my mentor, a friend, but like a mentor of mine. And he was the one that spurred me up to read. So I placed a call to him jokingly. I said, sir, I heard that they said you used to read a lot and then you are always talking about books you have read and all. How do you do that? How do you remember what you have read? How do you contain everything that you have read and then you're able to talk about it so freely and talk to people from books you have read? And he was like, who told you that? That who told you that I used to remember everything I've read and stuff like that? But I was like, yeah, I so I heard about you. And then I was like, that's not actually true. But the thing is, reading doesn't necessarily mean you're going to remember everything you have read. So don't be deceived. That's the point I want to bring out now. Don't be deceived. You are not always going to remember everything you have read. And that was what my conversation with this mentor friend of mine actually taught me. So he said something. He said, sometimes you might be reading a book and it's only one word that you remember from there. And that one word will just be added to your vocabulary. So probably you're reading a 300 and something page book, and it's just one word from that book that is that you remember, and that is the one word that will be added to your vocabulary. Like for example, now, even though I'm not a good English student or something like that, I remember that I remember I was reading a particular book, and the word that stuck to me from that book was precocious. Like precocious. What's the meaning of precocious? So I went to check the book. I went to check the book to see the context in which that word was used. I was trying to make up a meaning for it. It was not making sense in my head. So I went to the dictionary and I got the meaning of the word. And then I discovered that that was the only thing I could remember from me reading that book. The only thing I could remember was that I'm dropping the book, taking a dictionary to look up the meaning of one word, and that one word was added to my vocabulary. So necessarily, you don't have to read a book to try to remember everything you have read. Just develop the culture, develop the habit, develop a system whereby you are reading at least to your level, you are reading enough books. So it will get to one point, and this is what I want people to know and remember. It will get to a point whereby you are you are overflowing of what you have read. I don't know a better way to put this, and probably this is why I script episodes so that I'll just have a better way to put it. But I think it's a bit interesting for me to be talking about it like this. It will get to a point after you have read several books, and probably I will talk about this on some other episode. You have to be selective about the books you are reading too. If you are trying to just build the culture and the habit, you don't take big books. You don't take books with difficult topics and concepts. You start from the level you are, something that will talk to you at the level you are. That's how you select books. So book selection is also important if you're trying to build the habit and the culture of reading. So um, what you do is you read to the point that there is now an overflow. So your subconsciousness has actually been storing some things that you're not aware of, and it is only going to deliver it to you when you need it. So until you read to that point, that is when you can now read a book and now remember more from the book than you used to when you started reading. So I don't really know if you understand what I'm saying, but I'm just trying to encourage you to just keep reading, keep studying, keep learning. You don't need to know how to apply it now. Let me just put it like that. Even though application is important, you don't need to know how to remember what you have read now. You don't need to know how to use what is in that book now. But to get to a point that you have read about that particular topic through several authors to an extent, and then there's now an overflow from within you. Like there's something stored up within you about that topic that you can now talk about on any platform or on any stage. Like, for example, there are some books I'm just reading again after I've read them initially. And me reading them again now, I'm getting more light from them than I did at the first instance. But it was because I pressed on while reading them at the first instance that I was able to get to this stage that I believe I am now, even though there's still a lot more to do for me. So that is that about that. So don't be deceived. You won't always remember everything you have read. Just continue reading. One day there will be an overflow, and then things that I've studied in your subconsciousness will just start pouring out. I hope I've been able to give a lot of value on this episode. And in case you are not really interested in this kind of episodes, probably you want me to do more scripting, just let me know. I don't really uh, have any preference left to me, but just let me know. I want it to be like as if I'm talking to a real set of people, and sharing my heart with people that are really interested in what I'm talking about. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for joining me again on this episode. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.